So welcome everybody. This is Artist Talk on Art, the ATOA. We're a 501c3, and we've been around for 45 years, mostly in the Lower West Side. Given COVID and the need for social distancing, we've turned to Zoom meetings every Monday, sort of an open format where artists share very casually, talk about their art, and you'll see that everybody sort of responds. We get very good input. And it becomes a nice sort of open round table. It's been going on. This is our 24th Monday of doing it. So it's almost a half a year of this. And, you know, it's been very rewarding. I'd like to welcome, there are several board members. I see Roberta Bernardi, our secretary. I see Mitch Pilnick, who has helped incredibly with social media. And I see Doug Shear, who's an original member of the board and founder of the ATOA, and continues to do so many things. I wouldn't want to take all your time just to list, but of course he always has technical difficulties. So welcome everybody. We'll sort of jump right in. We know that we do this every Monday. There is a chat function. There are ways for you to see your screen that you either see just the speaker or you see everybody. And of course, if your microphone is on and you don't want us to hear things, we're going to not only hear them, but we'll also, it'll probably jump your screen to the foreground. So use hand motions, get comfortable. There's whatever problem we have, it always seems to work out. Mark, I do want to start with you, if that's okay.
Sure.
Mark Eisendrath, and let me just ask you, Mark, where are you from now? Where are you?
Where am I from, or where do I live?
I guess both. I did want to know where you live, but that's definitely a better, deeper question to start with. So
sure. Well, born in Paris, France, raised in Michigan, went to college at Rhode Island School of Design, stayed there for a residency at the School for the Deaf in Providence, and then bounced around a little bit, lived again in France, a little bit in Madagascar, and then here in Baltimore. And so my home and studio is here in Baltimore.
Very nice. Did you say School for the Deaf?
Yes.
Very
I had a two-year artist residency position at the Rhode Island School for the Deaf.
Very nice work. Very nice. I'll just let you jump in and talk and show your art. I'll ask some questions as we go. There's a screen share function if you'd like. And likewise, like, you can hold up pieces to your computer. You do have a piece behind you. I just want to ask about the piece behind you. When you said School for the Deaf, I'm curious, how has that impacted your visual art?
Well, I don't know if the School for the Deaf really impacted it, but it was a good place for me to be at the time, because I had just gone 13 rounds with a brain tumor and had lost my left field of vision, and being tight with students who had a lot to recover from as well was a great environment for me. I had as much to gain from them as they did from me. Usually when you're dealing with an urban environment, and then add in deafness, there's typically, deafness is pretty much the least of their problems. And it was a great place for me to be. And the students and I got along famously, and sign language is full of pictures, and I love pictures. I understand pictures, so I picked it up very quickly.
Wow.
The artwork you're seeing behind me is one of my current pieces. And I've been working, I'm a sculptor and woodworker, and the piece behind me is reflective of my more recent works. And it's built from ancient beams that are milled up square, cross-cut, and then formulated into compositions, and then stained black with a variety of different finishes.
Do you usually work monochromatic or in the grayscales, or you did mention sculpture?
Yes. It's Should I pick the phone up and get closer to the piece? Okay, that'll require a little bit of wobbliness. Because I've got you on a tripod right now. Hold tight. All
For wobbliness.
All right.
That's okay. Nice palm.
This is a little bit more reflective of what I'm seeing.
What's the material?
These are ancient beams that are oak, to be more specific, wood. And these areas here are actually powdered suede.
Huh.
So I'm getting I'm really going after the push and pull effect of different finishes. So we've got the kind of, I hate to say shiny, but a more gloss or satin finish in the raised areas and a completely matte surface in the carved out areas.
Mark, are you using power tools? Somebody put that in the chat. Are you using power tools? Are you working with the cracks that are already in the wood? And if you would, everybody just try and speak up a little bit louder. I've got my iPad and it's a little tough for me to hear so well.
The power tools question, yes, every imaginable power tool. And I've got a full working shop downstairs in my house here in Baltimore. And then I continue with, as you know, as the pieces get more refined and the milling process gets more detailed, the size of the tool and the function of the tool gets more refined. So you go from a very raw process down to a very refined one as the closer you get to the finish line. And down here's another recent piece.
You know, I mean this in a very positive way. These are the kind of works that would work very well in buildings. Have you sort of entered that market at all?
Yes, I have. It's tricky. There's times when those kind of applications for the work really well, in terms of, you know, how the economy is operating. And you know who the designer is, you know, because the designer and the client work together to formulate the interior identity of a building. And if it calls for this kind of unapologetically masculine feel, then I do get a call.
I was wondering one thing. They look very massive. I was wondering about the weight. Do you require any special installation for attaching to the wall, or
No,
it's not
actually,
heavy as it looks?
well, they look very heavy. You're right. They end up being, I'm going to take you to the sidewalls here. They end up being about 1.5 inches thick. And the biggest pieces are less than 70 pounds. So they end up not being too big of a threat. And so a normal commercial wall anchor typically does the trick.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
They're very nice.
Thank you very much.
Oh, go back to that last one. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, I'm looking at your Instagram page.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that you show the process and you show the sketch and all that other stuff on the Instagram.
Thank you.
It kind
You
of
never know what's going to be a good post or not, you know?
You know, I know they're only
bit
a
of color in
few
there.
feet, Mark, but when you're looking at it like that, it almost looks like a view from an airplane looking down, like a topological view. You get a lot of scale out of your work.
it is good fun, and these things are very physically demanding as they are intellectually challenging as well to make. And so it's very satisfying on both of those ends, both of those sort of side of things. I need my work to be, both of those things. I need to be exhausted mentally and physically.
I think when we're involved with creating a work of art, often we don't realize what it's taking from us. And then when you finish, you then have this feeling like you did a lot. Your body can actually be exhausted, as well as when you're painting, your arm can be tired from having used it so much. Somehow while we're doing it, I don't think we sense it.
Oh, totally. Completely agree.
Do you ever do either floor pieces or more three-dimensional work?
I'm sorry?
Do you ever do either floor pieces or more three-dimensional work? No, these are all kind of bas relief format.
These are kind of bas relief. I used to do many more sort of freestanding pieces, and I just kind of got intrigued by the idea of wall sculpture and being able to do them so that they hang, which makes them much easier to deal with from a maker standpoint and from the end user and owner standpoint.
Yeah, I just think they could be very powerful as sort of totemic pillars and that kind of thing.
I think that's a great piece of feedback.
Or cubes, or
Yep. I've done some cubes that actually end up being sort of more or less end tables, which is a nice application for these works.
It seems very original, and yet I always try and think, what do you find inspirational in artists from the past? What artists do you like, and do you, I see you're drawing on your own experience, but who would you say you either reference or respect in the art world?
Currently working or past working?
Both.
Well, let me see if I can, I'll show you. My bookshelf is right over here.
Oh, it's by the way, if you ever get to be in an artist studio, look at the books.
Absolutely.
That tells you a lot about an artist's mind, what he reads. They'll often say most of the books are in storage, but that doesn't matter. The books that are out will reveal a lot about an artist.
Let's see, let's get a little bit more light on the subject here. All right, you ready?
Yep. I was going to say Diebenkorn, because I see it in your lines.
Well, Diebenkorn, he's, whenever you're looking at a painting, you're looking at a painting, correct?
Generally.
His work is his paintings you have to look into versus at.
And what do you mean by that? I'll let you open that thought up, because that's a good thought.
Well, I really think, all the layering and sort of self-imposed difficulty he had with every piece. There's so many layers and he wanted the mistakes to be part of the end composition, and wanted the composition to be sort of a teaser, that was revealed through the longer you look at the work, the more of the composition is revealed just through what the viewer is experiencing. Not like a Rothko whose, visual hold is immediate.
Mark, we lost your visual momentarily.
Okay. Oh. How's that?
There you go.
Okay.
You're back.
Yeah.
I think we all respect Gaudi very much. I don't know if anybody here has been to Spain. An interesting story about Gaudi. he was looking at one of his great buildings when it was finished. And as he was walking backwards, he was hit by a trolley car, and that's how he died.
Oh. Wow.
It's a very sad story, but the guy was so far ahead of his times. He did things, I mean, nobody's done anything like that even now.
That story is like how these people today are taking selfies at, you know, the Grand Canyon and they fall off.
Yes.
Right. I mean, you know, not long ago, I was pretty devoted to charing my work. And I developed a,
Mark, we lost your
we're
visual
not getting an
again.
sorry.
There you go.
Looks like I keep getting a phone call or something. So after I survived a plane crash in Costa Rica, I started charring my work, and I developed a sort of a personal little napalm that I could spread on my pieces and then ignite, and it became a permanent finish to the work.
Mhm.
So you know, those near misses are really informative.
So if you become rich and famous, Mark, and I can only wish that for you, you should bronze one of these, because the detail in the surface will look amazing bronzed.
I
Cast.
agree. Yeah.
It's expensive, but it would be an amazing surface.
On the subject of rich and famous, can we make that happen?
Just see me after class.
Let's end it right there. That was perfect.
Okay.
Wondering, have you thought of making prints with your work?
What's this?
Prints.
Making prints?
Actually
like woodcut?
using the work as a block and printing off of the work.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Exactly.
It is a great idea.
On paper.
Yeah.
Right. I could see
Very
that in
interesting.
prints.
It doesn't, no response.
Well, you
I'm sorry,
disappeared.
I lost you there for a second. Hello?
Oh,
Hi. No, just saying the printing is a very interesting idea. I will say you sort of summed up what artists do. You've had some severe things happen in your life. Obviously, the plane crash, having the cancer treatments. I think you said it was a brain tumor.
Yeah.
And you're often, that makes you a richer artist in a way. It sort of gives you an insight that you don't have before the tragic event. And I've seen artists work with burning. About 10 years ago, I started to see it, and I thought it'd be a great exhibition where you did like artists that work with fire, because it's not a common material. I've known an artist who poured gasoline and lit it on the paper, and it is not easy to control. And of course, artists are always looking for challenging and interesting materials, but you're not just searching, you're using materials that are from your life.
Sure. And, the list goes on. When I was 16, I got stuck in the two forest fires that were burning the Wind River Wilderness the year that Yellowstone burned. This is like 89, I believe. And that was another amazing event that it was just part of a list of things that, I just survived, but end up, I guess your intake mechanisms are different. When you survive these things, you pull information in through these events that make you who you are.
Yes, but I'll also say I see a smile on your face, and I like that. And, it's often not easy to come away with that after the events you described, but maybe, I think the artists use the art to get through the events, and the events don't end when they end. It could be a whole lifetime of sort of getting through it and, expanding on it and delving into it through your art. But you've obviously come out of it really well from what I see. And that says a lot about you. I never met you before, but, I want to say your work is very interesting right away. It speaks of a severity, a complexity. It's both simple and it has that detail. And yes, as Doug mentioned, there are many ways to grow it and change it. And Eloise pointed out printing. Very interesting. I think one of the nice things about our meetings is you see everybody does something differently. And that's because we all are unique. But as artists, we can all relate to everything you're doing there. And I think great work, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mark, one other thing,
What's
consider,
that?
because these are very black, right?
Yes,
Consider flipping that and doing something that's white.
I tried it.
Okay,
It's too loud.
okay.
So you paint the wood black or something like that?
Well, I used to use a torch to char the surfaces, but when I started getting more interested in having a little bit more cooperation with the material, a little bit more control, to get better joinery, to get a little bit more influence on what the final object would look like, I wanted to be able to mimic the properties of charring without actually charring.
Oh,
Because you'll spend days getting this joint just right. And then you hit it with a torch and all that effort just, reverses.
yeah, because once a plank of pine wood was in the fire, and once I retrieved it, it had all that checkered black.
Oh, it's
It's
beautiful.
great. It was great.
Yeah.
And the boyfriend, I hung that up, but then the boyfriend doesn't like it. I mean,
Oh,
it's black on black.
Then get rid of the boyfriend.
He is gone out of my life. I don't have that plank. I really don't have that plank.
Keep the wood. Dump the
Did you
boyfriend.
make him walk the plank?
Almost, but he got me arrested.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
For
don't answer
domestic
that.
violence. Try
Mitch,
to use a mat knife and him calling a police on that?
Oh boy.
Ridiculous.
Remember, this
Mitch.
is being recorded. This is being recorded.
Yeah, I hope he hears it.
Mitch, you're muted. You
Oh,
wanted to make a
money.
comment, Mitch Pilnick?
A couple of questions. First of all, how do you come about coming to, as far as tonight's
I didn't catch
meeting?
I didn't catch that.
Mitch asked, how did you
how-
come to know about the meeting tonight?
How did I find out?
Yeah,
Through Audra Lambert, who's a curator in New York City.
Great. Another question. So you grew up in France?
I was born in France, grew up in Michigan.
I've spent some
Where
time
in
in.
Michigan?
I'm sorry, excuse me. I've spent
I'm
some
sorry.
time in Baltimore. How did you come about living in Baltimore? How long have you been there?
I got here like how most people get places through their ex. So I moved here with my.
It's a great area.
I liked Baltimore immediately, and it seemed like Detroit with a pulse, and it was really not hard to feel at home here very quickly.
No, it's a great area. Last question, last comment. I was looking through your website as you were speaking, and one of your earlier pieces I like very much. I'm curious when you produced it was titled "Never Start at the End."
Yes, that was
So tell me
done.
about that.
Does that have a date on it?
No, no, it didn't have any dates. I'm curious how that evolved for you and when you produced that.
Never Start at the End was, I think that's 2010 or 2011. I believe that one was made. That was made as a triptych out of three painting panels. And I was working almost exclusively in paper at that point, and my ideas were getting either too built up with material, too heavy for the substrate, or a combination of things, which made me go into using those painting panels as a means of getting a piece made.
What do you mean by that title, Never Begin at the End?
Never Start at the End?
Yes.
My painting professor at RISDee who's a wonderfully weird fellow named Bill Drew. And we used to shoot pool and drink beer at this great dive bar in Providence for every Thursday for a number of years, and just talk about painting and talk about girls and all kinds of stuff. And I was describing to him a piece I was trying to make, and I didn't understand why it wasn't working because I had the sketch right there next to it. And he said, "You're looking at the sketch as if it's the start, but it's actually the end, and you're trying to start the painting at the end. Get rid of the sketch."
Smart. I like that advice.
Well, he's a Fulbright scholar. he's got a, go ahead.
What year were you at RISDee?
I was there from 91 through 96.
Certainly a great school. Great
Oh,
art
it's
school.
a great place. Great place. And very lucky to spend another 2 years in Providence on the other side of town, working at what they call the other RISDee, which is the Rhode Island School for the Deaf.
I was lucky enough when I was in high school, I did the RISDee program in the summer for high school students. We got to be on campus. We had all the sort of heads of department teach us, and that was quite an introduction to art in, I guess, 6 weeks. I guess that's what it was.
Yes. I taught at one of those summer programs. It was great. It's a great way to get a feel for a place.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Well, thank you, Mark. Brilliant work. I look forward to you joining us other times. We like to do snaps and claps here, sort of our way of saying, you know, we appreciate your time and your work's interesting. And I think as we see work like this, it opens up our minds. It opens us up to something else. And certainly your use of materials, and, you know, you get something very beautiful and clean and yet rugged. So you're sort of balancing the minimal, the maximal, the geometric, the biomorphic. You've got a lot of things going on, and it's a pleasure to look at. It really is.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Michael Krasowitz, would you like to, let me find, Michael, would you like to go ahead now?
Sure. I thought it was going to be boy, girl, boy, girl.
It would be, but we had no girls come to the plate today.
Oh, yeah. Can I share screen?
Yes, I have it set up for it.
Okay. So I've been here before, so I'm just going to share some of the most recent stuff. We went to the Met the other day, and whenever Wendy and I go to the Met, we wear the art clothes so we can photograph each other in the museum. So I thought this one was kind of funny. This is one of my new painted pieces, and it's in monochromatic. And this
In
is
that,
another,
the artist you're next to, the work that you were next to, I forget his name.
this here,
Yeah.
I don't know who the artist is for that piece, honestly.
Yeah, that's the artist that sort of takes off on the African works. Very famous.
Huh.
But go ahead. I didn't want to
So
interrupt.
I'm really interested in art clothes as a way of kind of breaking the fourth wall and getting art into the public realm and trying to figure out any way to kind of make art relevant in a different way. So it's not something that's kind of elevated to something that's, you know, like iconic kind of thing. So I want it to be more functional. So this was a thing that the Hirshhorn Museum had a gala a couple of weeks ago, and they had basically the theme was modern, something with modernism. So we thought it was going to be like a fashion show and everybody was going to be on Zoom and we were all going to wear our clothes. So Wendy and I are sitting here, and we have our clothes and we're all dressed and ready. They didn't do that, but they did do some kind of presentation. So this is what they showed on the thing. And it was really funny because we didn't expect anything, but they wind up kind of mentioning our work and they put it on their website. So I think it's kind of interesting. This is the, of course it didn't work. So the Hirshhorn, this is, let me see if I can find it. Sorry. This was the first winner. this is the guy that won the award because it looked like the movie Metropolis they mentioned. And
Fritz Lang film.
yeah, the Fritz Lang film. And then we were mentioned, so I thought it was kind of interesting to show that. Maybe not that interesting. It was interesting to me. And I just thought I'd show you my recent paintings.
You know, I often do wonder about art that's on a gallery or a museum wall, and it seems somewhat dead. And I like that you're trying to, like you say, bring it into the fourth wall and bring it into real life. I think the history of lots of arts and music wasn't just in a concert hall. Music was when people were around the fire or when a group of people were together. It was more active in a space. I want to ask you, does Wendy ever perform and dance when you're in a museum?
Yeah, we've done a number of things where we'll use them as a costume. And we have a friend that's an opera singer. So we'll work with the opera singer and I'll design the costume based on that. So we've done that a few times. And my wife is a dancer, so we do this kind of collaborative pieces. I was watching John Berger's series from the 70s, The Relevant, where do you see art? Barry, do you know what I'm talking about?
Repeat that again.
The guy John Berger, he wrote a series in the 70s about how art changes its relevance where it's seen.
Interesting.
It was and so his thesis was that once upon a time you had to go to that church to see that painting, and you would do a pilgrimage. And once it became accessible, where you can reproduce it and print it, it changed the context of how the art is perceived and what the relevance of the art is, because now you could take that same piece and you can have it on your refrigerator. So it changes the context of how somebody interacts and perceives that particular piece of artwork. And he was kind of drawing a lot of parallels to how people look at the models in the painting and how the people in the painting perceive the people looking at the painting. It's a lot of really, really interesting ideas.
You know, also, in the past, as you pointed out, it took a certain effort, whether it was a pilgrimage, there was a certain amount of work to get to it. That is part of the beauty of it. On the other hand, there's a beauty to having accessibility almost everywhere. You know, it comes with advantages and both disadvantages too.
Yeah, because you're not seeing the actual physical object.
Right.
So I'm really interested in TikTok. I am like on TikTok way too much, but there are art historians, there are art critics, there are so many people doing interesting things on TikTok. That's where the discussion about art is right now, as far as I can see. It's not necessarily, I mean, yes, there's museums and that relevance, but this is also recontextualizing it for a whole nother generation. So for a long time, I've been doing Instagram. And the other thing I wanted to show you guys today was, I don't know if I can do it, but if I can X out of this, is what I've been doing is I present the work and I ask people directly to interpret what they see in the work. I'll try to bring up one that have a good response. So what I do is when I present it, I specifically, you know, there's a thing in social media where you want to do is there's a word for it, I can't remember. You ask them to do a specific thing. It's like a direction. So click on this to like this. But the idea is that makes it interactive and it gives the viewer a way to kind of get themselves involved in the artwork. So I got this idea that I would say, what do you see? So I would make a somewhat ambiguous narrative, and then they can create their own story based on the narrative. And it's really interesting. I mean, I'm getting all kinds of interesting responses. And I think it's like this one, somebody said Hansel and Gretel. I think one person said Humpty Dumpty, wildfire victims. It's really interesting. I think that, you know, in terms of
Would you like some comments?
Sure, of course.
I'm seeing, you know, and I don't know whether I'm really seeing it directly or it's evoking it. The Mexican muralists is one thing that came to my mind. And also, there's something very South American, Central American about your work, which is not you, obviously. So that's quirky. I haven't really figured out what that is, but, or whether it's even anything conscious for you, but it's interesting.
I do kind of have a theory about that.
Really? Okay.
I think that, you know, I think that the Mayans and some of their rituals were definitely tapping into archetypal imagery. And I think that they were using hallucinogens directly to create this environment where they would have visions and things of that, whether they perceive the future, about the next planting season or whatever. So what I try to do is, through my many years of doing this, is like I have no intention when I paint, and whatever emerges, I kind of follow the narrative. I try to develop it into whatever it comes out to. So,
Michael, would you categorize your paintings as figurative works?
they have figurative elements for sure. Yeah.
I think they formulate. I mean, the exact, you know, the objects that you're painting, the figures, seem to me to have a nice quality of abstraction in them. And so when your pictures are viewed either small, like on a phone screen like this, or on Instagram or what have you, there is a sense of abstraction to them, which makes them quite appealing to look at when you're not in the mood to look at figurative painting. It's you know, it seems to have a there's a sense of abstraction about them, like how some landscape painters paint vistas that are you know, huge skylines and very small landscapes for that sense of abstraction.
I appreciate that. It's interesting because you say that, is because sometimes I'm not sure how far to take it in terms of making them more literal.
Yeah.
So like the one I posted today was, 2 days ago, was there were no faces, there were no forms. And then I went to define the forms a little bit more. And I want it to be ambiguous in a way, but at the same time, and I want to keep the flow going. I don't want to interrupt the flow with something that you fixate on one particular part or the other. So I try to keep it loose so that it can be about color and it can be about movement, without fixating on this is a figure and this is a narrative. So thanks.
You're welcome.
I will say I've given some thought to Aztec work. I was once around a fire in the Bronx, and I was just looking at the fire for a long time. And of course there was wood in it and the wood was burning. And it made me think of work from the Aztecs and other regions like that I wonder if they didn't do the same thing. And their imagery seems to be similar to how wood decomposes while it's burning. And, you know, I have no idea, but I often pick up on visual clues, and I wouldn't be surprised. And I think a good point was made that your work does have that sort of Aztec feel in it. You also bring your figures up close. You know, you create depth inside your form, but your form is thrown up close in most of your works. Very nice presentation, Michael. I want you to ask that question you asked earlier about Philip Gustion.
Oh, I was wondering if you guys have been reading about the Philip Gustion thing that's going on in the museums. That they and I was kind of blown away by the whole thing. So it was just an interesting conversation.
You guys, I've got to run. This has been great. My son is driving across the country. I've got to take a phone call from him.
Right.
Enjoy, Mark. Join us
Thanks,
again.
Thanks, guys.
Doug, would you like to run with some thoughts?
Yeah, a couple of things. You know, of course, Philip Gustion spent his later years, he spent a lot of time in Woodstock. He's buried in the Artist Cemetery here. I live in Woodstock. And at ATOA, we had a panel, I'm going to say it was about 1990, called simply Children of Artists. And on that panel was Musa Meyer, Philip Gustion's daughter, Amy and Eric Ernst, and Andrew Bolotovsky. And it was a very interesting panel about what it's like to be the child, or in the case of the Ernsts, child of and also grandchild of an artist. Very interesting. And I think what the whole dust up about the cancellations really is about is the fear of, in such a divisive political time that we're in, such extremes, the fear of having, the museums or the works be attacked. I think is probably what might have been behind it on the part of the museums. And I know that there's no question that Gustion became, in his later work, highly political, very left-wing, and highly political. So, and a lot of the work is about the KKK, racism, and so forth.
So if some of you don't know, Philip Gustion's Ku Klux Klan painting, the sort of white hoods, the triangular metal-looking almost images, the exhibition was canceled, and it brings up how work gets recontextualized by the contemporary time, and it brings up the censorship inside the art world. I won't give the museum a pass and say they were just worried about the artworks being damaged or attacked. There have been a lot of issues of censorship at the Whitney Biennial. I don't know if it was the last one or the one before, an artist engaging an imagery of a Black person getting terribly mutilated. Of course, it was a great artist, a great painter, and the question, can that artist even approach that subject matter? There's been a lot of things going on in the art world that have certainly up for debate, but I want to open it up to anybody else's thoughts as well on this subject matter. It is one of the pressing issues of the time, because Philip Gustion, he's a hero since he painted his boots and he got booed for that exhibit, and then everybody realized he was just a luscious painter. At least that's what I saw in him, and he's become a hero to so many even now. He's very much a contemporary artist with what he did in, I don't know if it was 1985, something like that, but I did see that show at the Whitney. I remember it. So he's certainly an artist at the top of the art world, maybe not in price, but in respect.
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be 4 shows, not just the
4 shows.
4 shows.
Yeah.
I thought it was just so ridiculous. I mean, what were they thinking, that he was a racist?
No. That he was too anti-racist for some people.
And
Too political was, I think, what they were fearing.
But are artists political to express their freedoms or the need for freedom?
Well, the important context too is these shows were planned, several years ago. It takes a long time, and so suddenly, as they were about to start, the whole context, the whole political atmosphere, became so charged. So I think that they couldn't have anticipated that, whatever their motives today.
I will say, beware of your current times. Art restorers, and I think it was the 1800s, birds were really in. And when they restored paintings, they actually painted birds that were not in the paintings, and they put them in because they loved birds in that era.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's crazy stuff.
Yeah.
That's an extreme. So I think artists have a freedom. And the great comedian, the one that Robin Williams really loved, I'm forgetting his name, he did paintings of KKK figures as well.
Mm-hmm.
With Winters, Jonathan Winters. He wasn't known as a painter, but he did paintings like that were not unlike Philip Gustion's. I think we put it out there. It should be seen. Maybe it sparks controversy in its time, and we learn from the controversy and the dialogue. It's never, I hate to use this expression, a black and white issue. Let's just say it's never a yellow and purple issue. There's always subtleties in between.
I think
I'm
it's
going to say
interesting.
we'll go forward. We'll have one more presenter. I am going to cut it a little short tonight, even though we're already at 53 minutes. Doug, go ahead. And Lawrence, I'll have you present next week, okay? And by the way, I just want to point out to everybody, you're all welcome. Keep coming and spread the word. Tell your friends about this. This is a great format to share work, to meet new artists. We are a 501c3. You can visit our website if you're interested in contributing. But like I always say, it's your time that you're giving to us, and we appreciate that. And we've formed a sense of community here that's been very valuable. So thank you all. And Doug, go ahead. You'll be our last presenter for tonight. Is that a new piece, Doug?
These are all pieces from September.
Hold it higher, please.
Doug,
Good.
what's the medium?
Acrylic on canvas paper.
Is there some kind of print process?
No.
Mhm.
It's just a border. I create my own border.
And it looks like you scrape into the paint.
Yes, that's part of the process.
Yeah, and also do you use some kind of masking device?
No.
No, okay. You don't want to reveal your secrets?
No, it's not that. It's just that I don't use a masking device.
Once again, Doug, I have to say there's a dimensionality that you get on these that I find fascinating.
The colors are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like the negative space you leave open too. I think that's very important in the piece.
Masking.
That's it for me.
Very nice. I will point out Doug has presented before, and we do have a YouTube channel. If you type in under YouTube Artist Talk on Art, you can get to see a full presentation by Doug that was done a couple of weeks ago. So it's another way to sort of, you know, if you have an extra hour and a half and you want to watch a long video, we've got it. We do have time. Lawrence, why don't you go ahead and present? Very nice, Doug. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Snapping and clapping.
There we go.
And
Okay.
Doug, I will say I could tell it was new work because the first one you showed had a multiple of colors that I'm not used to seeing in your work. And I think you have a really strength. You have strength in color and in the sort of gray work. And I think it helps when you restrict your color palette as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you have a bright sense of color. I like your sort of, even the one you just held up, that sort of strong yellow, red. It's very, you know, it's very in your face in the best of ways.
Thank you.
Very accomplished, Doug.
Thank you.
Oh,
Are my images showing up?
Yes.
This is a part of a series that's unedited called Dancing City, and it's you know, once again doing 99 or more likely 100% of the work on iPad using apps and taking photographs mostly that come out of my iPhone and then manipulating them, doing this sort of thing.
You realize you're turning them into Gaudis.
Yeah, this is definitely a Gaudi.
Oh, Gaudi.
Mhm.
Now, these are all 2 to 3 years old, maybe.
Uh-huh.
I just got totally addicted to the whole thing. And then one day I think it came to me in a dream that I should try it reversing one thing that I do, which I talked about last week, how I fractalize my work, thereby turning it into something that's closer to a vector format rather than a raster format, even though it's still a raster, but it prints like a vector, which is to say that I can print them rather large. And then on that realization, I said, oh yeah, let's see now, but how am I going to do that? Well, I just have to do that one in reverse. And then, yeah, okay, that's going to work out great. And it took me a while to come up with that though. And that was about 2 years ago that I realized, oh yeah, I should be doing it that way. And I haven't done even one since.
Now, let me ask you, when you're presenting these images, are you looking to show us another way to see reality, or are you looking to create another reality?
I don't have a clear answer for you. What I can say is that in doing all of my teaching, my number one motivation is to get my students to use their cameras like they are paintbrushes, because they are. And I talk about the difference between the camera and the paintbrush, and I essentially say there's no difference. And how free to do whatever we want to our images to make them not necessarily photographs anymore. I mean, to me, they're still photographs. But I'm taking from, for example, you might recognize the framing, or the what am I trying to say, the mat here. If you recall the old days, we had 2 different kinds of Polaroid transfers. One where Polaroid film, the type that comes out of the camera, and you pull it and you're squishing chemicals, and it spreads the chemistry across the thing, and then you wait whatever it was 60 seconds, and then you peel them apart. You throw one part away. Well, that part you threw away was actually the part that did all of the work. The part that you're saving, that piece of paper, it has no chemical qualities whatsoever. It's just the receptor of what's happened on that other thing. So in other words, what you could do would be to take it out of the camera, and rather than waiting the 16 minutes, peel off the paper, throw that away, and then take the developer part, the part that's doing all the work, and put it onto something else, most commonly watercolor paper, but I know people who did it onto rocks and such things, or even onto the wall.
By the way, there was a guy who would regularly be in front of the Guggenheim who did Polaroid transfers, and they were brilliant works selling at a reasonable price. There are a lot of street artists, but usually 1 in 100 is the real deal. And this guy is the real deal, and his work was going very inexpensively, and every piece was dynamite.
I wish I had seen him. When was this?
I want to say I would see him 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 8 years ago. And I think his brother also shows some stuff. So I haven't seen him as much because I haven't been going, obviously. I've got to ask you this. There's a hallucinogenic quality to these photos. Am I correct to bring that up?
Well, I haven't done hallucinogens in about 35 years, but I did a lot of them before that.
That's funny. That is funny. Lawrence.
Yes.
The word absolutely to mind each of these images. I love how some of them look like they're total paintings, and others you see that photographic quality. Similar to, not similar to this, but I'm not an artist, but I've used a app called Prisma to convert photographs into all these different types of artworks that the Prisma app offers. So I really like all the work that you do. Thanks.
Thank you.
They're
I'd
meant
echo Mitch's thoughts. I like it, and I do like it when you break the edge. A lot of painting and a lot of photography is breaking the picture plane, and when the edge of your photograph, I mean, that's totally different and very painterly what you have on the screen now. But when you break that edge and give me that sort of, you know, non-rectangular boundary, that does something very different than, you know, 999 out of 1,000 works of art.
And indeed, that's exactly what I was started my conversation about before, was the two different types of Polaroid transfer. And the other type was where you'd strip the paper off and still throw it away or use it for notepad or something. And then taking the negative part and floating it in water so that you can take the emulsion off of it, floating it in water, then lay down, or actually you would lay down watercolor paper underneath the water first, and then very, very, very gently try to get the edges of this gelatinous mess and then put it onto paper. And you would wind up, of course, with edges that were like this, or more likely significantly more chaotic.
Do your students kind of have that similar format, or can they repeat what you've done?
I don't. I've had lots of students that have followed, you know, because I'm completely free in the classroom and otherwise to, you know, say how I did this and how I did that. Unlike some of my very close friends who have done great work but won't tell how they do it. But when it comes to this particular thing, I cannot recall anybody actually doing this one. The next time I present, perhaps I'll present one that's called kaleidoscope or kaleidoscopic. Where I did have recently, as a matter of fact, a student that did so much better work than I've done ever, and he wound up doing them like within 2 weeks of the time I showed him how to how to do it. So, and I find that very exciting when that happens.
So this makes photography a little more edgy, in a way, more acceptable as opposed to having selfies. And
yeah. Well, these are all selfies. Don't you know that when you're looking at photographs, you're it's either
reflection of yourself?
Yeah, a fellow I know, he's a photographer and a therapist, a psychotherapist, and he says that we often think of that when we're looking at a photograph, we're looking through the photographer's eyes, but in fact, when we have 3 or 5 or more pictures by the same photographer, we're looking into his.
Yeah, I've had that conversation with Chester Higgins when going abroad, and you know, so I do recognize my background with how I connect with the photographs that I photograph.
I didn't, just because I went through that even faster than I thought I would, I am going to look for kaleidoscope just to give you a hint of what I was talking about there. I see it's one of these, at least this was in the last thing. Yeah, this is here too. These aren't fully sorted yet, but here we get something like that.
Oh yeah.
This is done actually mostly in the camera because I'm in the subway going across the Manhattan Bridge and doing triple exposures, you know, firing the shutter very quickly while the train is moving. But then this one is done that way, and then I've added this kaleidoscopic effect, which is essentially it's inside of Snapseed that I'm doing this. So as a matter of fact, this. Yeah, this is all inside of Snapseed. The other one, it might have been Prism because I have, or whatever that was called, because I do have that app, but I don't recall actually ever using it. So it might, at this moment, I can't remember which, you know, this happens. When I want to do something, I have to go and try out 5 old apps that I have just to find the one that does what I'm talking about. But here it's the Snapseed, and it has this thing, it's called Expand. And when you click on expand, it winds up putting the picture inside of a bigger white box. And then you've got handles that allow you to just sort of stretch it in one way or another. And that's what
Well, Lawrence, you definitely work very well both in a geometric framework and then also in a curvilinear. They're very different, and your works are very interesting, either one. I think you are pushing, especially in that, you're pushing the boundaries of photography, and I think in the best of ways. And you're also engaging technology in the best of ways. Very interesting work. I am going to have to sort of cut us a little short tonight. I do want to thank you, Lawrence. That was, just look at the gamut of work we saw tonight. Snaps and claps. Very nice work.
Thank you.
From starting off with Mark's, burnt wood and that story. And, it just shows you every artist is deep. There's like a wealth of material in your life. Maybe when you're doing your work, you think this is normal and nothing, but it is very unique. And that's what makes it an interesting dish. Artists are we're a mix of many different artists. And it's very inspiring to see all this different work. Just like as teachers, there are several teachers here. You must be inspired by seeing your students and how different they are, and imagine how they have different teachers with different approaches. And so they learn from that. Maybe the lesson here is the worst thing is conformity. It's so nice to see Michael Krasowitz painting on his clothes, and someone else is taking photography and doing, you, Lawrence, something different. And Doug is doing things that it's hard to figure exactly, is he masking it or taping it? But Doug has come up with his own formula. And that's what we do as artists. We make our realities. We make our art. We make our own rules. It's not that there are no rules. That's another question always brought up. Are there rules in art? Of course there are. They're the rules that you impose on your art. You get to sort of choose those rules, and there has to be a cohesiveness in there as well. And I think from what we've seen tonight, everybody has explored sort of a deep path, and it's all mature work. I just want to thank you all. This is Artist Talk on Art. It's every Monday. Check out our website. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks. That's great.
This was great. Sorry to cut it short. I've got a room full of guests in the other room. I have to cook now.
Me too.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.